You weren't planning to cry. You didn't come to church looking for a breakdown, and yet there you were, barely a few minutes in, and suddenly something cracked. A single note in worship. A passing phrase from the sermon, or maybe just the silence between it all. And then the tears came, uncontrollable, unexplainable, almost embarrassing, but real. What if I told you that wasn't emotion? What if it was something divine, something far deeper than you've ever realized? What if those tears weren't weakness, but a message? Because here's the truth no one tells you. There's something happening in your spirit that your mind hasn't caught up with yet. And once you understand why it keeps happening, you'll never see your tears the same way again. The mystery of tears in God's presence. You walk into church on an ordinary Sunday. The music begins. Maybe it's just a few soft chords on the piano or a familiar song you've heard a dozen times. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until suddenly, your chest tightens, your throat closes, and before you can stop it, tears. Quiet at first, but steady. You try to hold it in, blink it away, pretend nothing's happening, but it's too late. Something inside you has already broken open, and the truth is, you don't even know why. These moments are sacred. They don't follow logic. They can't be timed or explained, because this isn't about emotions, it's about presence. The presence of God has a way of reaching into the deepest, most hidden parts of us. Places we didn't even know needed healing. And when that happens, the soul speaks the only language it knows, tears. Picture this. A woman walks into a room where Jesus is reclining at the table. She doesn't speak. She doesn't ask for anything. She just kneels and begins to weep. Her tears fall on his feet as she pours out her perfume in worship, Luke 7:38. No explanation, just a soul overflowing in the presence of holiness. And Jesus, he doesn't need her words. He sees the heart behind every drop. That's what he sees in you too. Maybe your tears in church aren't about sadness. Maybe they're about release or surrender or a deep, wordless longing for something more. Maybe it's your spirit finally responding to God's voice after a season of silence. The kind of cry that doesn't say, "I'm broken," but rather, "I've been found." It's not weakness, it's worship, it's transformation. It's the Spirit of God touching something in you that no sermon, no lyric, no human hand could ever reach. And I want to ask you, have you ever tried to fight that moment? Tried to stay strong or keep it together because you didn't want to be seen? If you have, you're not alone. But here's the truth. Those tears might be your breakthrough. They might be the very thing God is using to soften your heart, shift your mindset, or draw you back to Him. Sometimes tears are not a breakdown, they're a breakthrough. The Bible says, "The Spirit helps us in our weakness, with groans too deep for words," Romans 8:26. That means even when you don't have the right words, the right prayer, or even the strength to speak, your tears still reach heaven. They are seen. They are understood, and they are holy. So next time you feel the tears come in church, don't rush to wipe them away. Pause, listen, let them flow. Because behind those tears might be a message from God Himself. When God breaks through without warning, it often starts without any warning. One moment you're sitting in a pew, mind wandering, going through the motions, and the next, it feels like heaven crashes into your chest. You're overwhelmed, not by anything external, but by something eternal. A sudden awareness that you're not just in a building, you're in the presence of God. And in that moment, all the defenses you've built, they crumble. Not because you're weak, but because He's strong enough to reach what you've tried to hide. These moments feel like ambushes of grace. You weren't expecting it. You weren't asking for it. But He came anyway. Why? Because God doesn't need your perfect posture, your polished prayers, or your emotional control. He's after your heart. And sometimes, the only way to get to it is to interrupt you. That's why some of the most life-altering moments with God happen in silence, in stillness, when no one else even notices what's happening. Do you remember Saul on the road to Damascus? He wasn't on a spiritual retreat. He was on his way to persecute Christians, but in a blinding moment, Jesus broke through, knocked him to the ground, changed everything. That's how God works. Not always when we seek him, but often when we least expect him. You might have come to church thinking about bills or burdens or lunch plans. But God had other plans, divine ones. It's in these interruptions that we realize how deeply God knows us. He knows when you're holding things together on the outside, but falling apart on the inside. He knows when your smile is masking exhaustion, confusion, or quiet desperation. And he doesn't wait for you to come forward. Sometimes he just shows up, wrecks you in the most beautiful way, and you're never the same again. Here's the question I want you to consider. When was the last time you let yourself be interrupted by God? Not just inspired, not just touched, but interrupted. Has he ever caught you off guard, mid-service or mid-song, and suddenly the weight of his love knocked the wind out of you? If it has, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. If it hasn't, it just might be closer than you think. Because God doesn't need your schedule. He doesn't follow your emotional timing. He moves when he moves. And when he does, everything in you shifts. The tears aren't random. They're the evidence that something eternal just stepped into your temporary world. And that kind of encounter, it changes people. The unspoken burdens you didn't know you were carrying. There's a moment that hits differently in church. It's when everything around you seems normal, people worshiping, the band playing, the pastor speaking, but inside, something breaks. And not because of what was said, but because something heavy inside you finally surfaced. Maybe it's grief you never processed. Maybe it's disappointment you shoved deep down. Maybe it's years of pretending you're okay. Suddenly, in God's presence, the dam you didn't even know existed begins to crack. That's what tears in church often are. Not weakness, not overreaction, but release. You've been carrying things for so long you forgot what it feels like not to carry them. Trauma, regret, guilt, fear, pressure to hold your family together, pressure to always be the strong one. Church becomes the first place where your soul can finally exhale. And when it does, your emotions don't whisper, they pour. We see this in Scripture too. Hannah, barren and broken, went to the temple and wept bitterly before the Lord. 1 Samuel 1:10. She wasn't trying to put on a show. She wasn't concerned with what others thought. She was exhausted, desperate. But in that place of raw, vulnerable honesty, something shifted. God saw her, and he moved. That same invitation is extended to you, not to be perfect in his presence, but to be real. Maybe you've gotten really good at keeping it together, at staying composed, smiling, saying I'm fine when you're not. But in God's presence, masks fall, not to expose you, but to free you, because the burden of appearing whole is often heavier than the pain of being broken. And church becomes the one sacred space where you don't have to perform anymore. Here's something to wrestle with. What are you carrying that you were never meant to carry alone? When was the last time you let yourself fall apart? Not in defeat, but in surrender. Tears are often God's way of saying, let me take that from you. Not in judgment, in compassion. He already knows. He already sees. He's just waiting for you to let go. The truth? Many people walk into church carrying silent weights. But God doesn't speak only to the loud. He moves in whispers, in stillness, in tears. And when he begins to lift what's been sitting on your soul for years, the only appropriate response is to cry, not out of fear, but finally, relief. How the presence of God bypasses the mind and goes straight to the soul. There's something sacred and unsettling about how God moves. He doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't knock politely and wait for you to feel ready. When His presence fills a room, it doesn't speak to your logic. It speaks directly to your spirit. That's why you can sit through an entire sermon and not remember every word, but one line, one lyric, one holy pause, and you're undone. The tears come, and you can't explain it, because this isn't a mental encounter. It's soul to soul. You see, we're trained to intellectualize everything, to process life through reason, debate, analysis. But God, He speaks in a different frequency. He's not just after your thoughts. He's after your heart. And the heart doesn't respond to logic. It responds to love, to truth, to presence. That's why a single moment in worship can undo years of emotional walls. Because God bypasses the brain and touches what even therapy sometimes can't reach. Think of Peter. After denying Jesus 3 times, the risen Savior meets him not with accusation, but with a simple question. Do you love me? John 21:15. Peter had no theological defense, no clever argument. He was raw, exposed. But in that moment, love cut deeper than shame. That's what happens in the presence of God, the kind that slips past your intellect and floods the places you've tried to seal shut. Have you ever been in church and felt something shift, even though you couldn't put it into words? That's not just atmosphere, that's encounter. And it explains why you might cry without fully knowing why. God is reaching for something within you, a memory, a wound, a dream, a surrender. And your spirit recognizes it before your mind can catch up. Your tears are proof that you're not just hearing, you're receiving. Here's a thought. What if the tears you fight are actually your soul saying yes? Yes to healing. Yes to freedom. Yes to letting go of what's been gripping you for years. It's not about being emotional. It's about being spiritually awakened. That's why people who never cry in public suddenly break in church, because there, the filters are gone, and what's left is real. We often underestimate just how much the Spirit of God can accomplish in a single moment. No altar call, no spotlight, just Him and you, and a soul ready, even if unknowingly, to be changed. That's the power of God's presence. It doesn't always ask for comprehension. It just asks for surrender. And in that surrender, transformation begins. When worship unlocks what words never could, there's a moment in worship that feels like time pauses. The lyrics aren't just words on a screen. They become confession. The melody becomes movement. And before you know it, you're not singing about God anymore. You're singing to Him. That shift, that's where everything changes. Because worship doesn't just fill a room, it exposes hearts. And sometimes all it takes is one note, one verse, one whispered, Holy Spirit, come. And suddenly your tears answer a question you never asked out loud. Worship is a language your soul already knows. Long before your mind can rationalize what's happening, your spirit begins to respond. Why? Because worship creates a space where you stop striving and start receiving. It's not about performance, it's about presence. And when that presence descends, gently or with power, things locked up for years begin to surface. Hurt, hope, hunger. And sometimes the only thing your body can do is cry, because your heart finally found a voice. In Acts 16, Paul and Silas worshipped in prison, not after they were freed, but while they were still chained. And what happened? The earth shook, the doors opened. Worship didn't follow freedom, it caused it. That's what worship does. It's not emotional hype. It's spiritual warfare, it's healing. It's a weapon against the heaviness we carry but never speak about. And when God moves through worship, chains you didn't even realize you had start to fall. But let's get real. Sometimes we come into worship distracted. We're tired, anxious, disconnected. And yet, somehow, the moment we open our mouth, even reluctantly, God meets us. Why? Because worship isn't about us. It's about Him. And in giving Him what He deserves, we often receive what we didn't even know we needed. That's why people break down mid-song. Not because the song is sad, but because the Spirit is near. I want to ask you something real. When was the last time you let go in worship? Not just sang along, but surrendered? When you forgot who was watching? When you stopped trying to look okay? When you let the music carry your heart into the presence of a God who already knew your pain? If that hasn't happened in a while, maybe it's time to stop holding back. Maybe your breakthrough is waiting on the other side of your surrender. The truth is, worship isn't always neat. It's not always pretty. Sometimes it's messy. It wrecks your mascara, breaks your composure, silences your pride, but it also rebuilds you, restores you, revives you. Because when worship is real, the tears aren't a breakdown, they're a birthing. Something new is happening, and God is in it. The silent dialogue between you and God. Sometimes the loudest moments with God happen in complete silence. No lightning bolts, no prophetic declarations, just stillness and tears. A quiet worship song in the background. A bowed head and a heart speaking 1,000 words without saying a single one. It's in that sacred hush that something extraordinary happens. Your soul begins a conversation with God that only He can hear. You might not be able to put it into words, but He's listening, fully, intimately. This is why you can sit in church surrounded by people and still feel like it's just you and Him. A sacred exchange begins, not with your mouth, but with your heart. It's not emotionalism. It's spiritual intimacy. God doesn't need volume to speak. He doesn't require eloquence to understand. And your tears in that moment are not weakness. They're evidence. Evidence that something is happening beneath the surface, something only heaven sees. David writes in Psalm 56:8, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Think about that. Every tear, documented, remembered, not ignored, not forgotten. Your silent moments in God's presence don't disappear into the air. They are sacred entries in His eternal record of your story. You are seen even when you say nothing. Have you ever felt something stirring during a moment of stillness? Like God was pulling you into something deeper even though you didn't quite understand it? That's not imagination, that's invitation. The tears start to come, your heart starts to crack open, and suddenly you realize this isn't just a service. This is a holy appointment, a divine whisper reminding you that you are not invisible, that He is near. Maybe you've spent years talking to everyone except God, pouring yourself out in conversations but never pausing long enough to be poured into. And then, in a quiet church moment, you feel it, the breaking, the longing, the return. That's what the silence is for. To strip away the noise, to quiet the fear, to remind you that God doesn't just love crowds, He loves you. What's powerful is this: God answers in the silence too, not always with words, sometimes with peace, sometimes with a shift in your heart, a release, a whisper that says, "You're safe here. You don't have to carry it anymore." And that's when the tears fall, not from pain, but from permission. Permission to be known, to be healed, to be loved deeply, when conviction feels like crushing, but heals like grace. There's a type of cry that isn't triggered by pain, but by conviction. It hits unexpectedly. You hear a verse, a line from the sermon, a moment in worship, and suddenly it feels like God just turned a spotlight on a part of your life you've been trying to avoid. It's not shame, it's not guilt, it's deeper than that. It's conviction, that unmistakable moment when your spirit knows something needs to change, and that God's calling you into it with love, not condemnation. This kind of crying feels different. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's personal, intimate, like a surgeon's hand cutting deep, but only to remove what's been infecting you from the inside. That's what conviction is, a holy discomfort that doesn't expose you to hurt you, but to heal you. And in that moment, when the tears fall, it's like your heart finally admits what your mouth couldn't say. God, I need you to fix this. Peter knew that feeling. After denying Jesus 3 times, he remembered the words Jesus had spoken, and the Bible says he wept bitterly. Luke 22:62. But here's what's beautiful. Jesus didn't leave him in that brokenness. After the resurrection, he restores Peter not with a rebuke, but with a question. Do you love me? That's conviction. Not a hammer, but a hand. Not punishment, but a path back to purpose. Some of the most transformative moments in your walk with God will feel like this, heavy yet holy. Tears that aren't about emotional release, but spiritual awakening. You start to see yourself clearly, the pride, the compromise, the hardness of heart. And yet, instead of running away, you feel drawn in closer. That's how you know it's God. Because true conviction always comes with an invitation. Come home, come clean, come closer. I want to ask you honestly, has God ever convicted you in a way that made you weep? Not out of fear, but because you knew he was right. Because you knew you couldn't keep living the same way. And instead of pushing you away, he pulled you in. That's the difference between shame and conviction. Shame says, you're unworthy. Conviction says, you were made for more. And here's the promise. Those who sow in tears will reap with shouts of joy. Psalm 126:5. Meaning what starts in brokenness ends in breakthrough. That's the path of real transformation. Conviction cracks the surface. Grace does the rebuilding. And sometimes all of that begins with a tear. Tears as a portal to divine understanding. Sometimes the reason we cry in church isn't just about release, surrender, or conviction. It's about understanding, an unspoken revelation that seeps into your soul before your mind can process it. You might not even realize what's happening at first. One moment you're listening, the next, your chest tightens, your hands tremble, and the tears roll down. It's as if God is translating mysteries of life, pain, and purpose directly into your spirit, bypassing logic entirely. This is why tears feel so sacred in that setting. Because they aren't random, they are a language, a divine channel that connects the invisible to the visible, eternity to the moment, heaven to your heart. What you feel is real, even if you can't put it into words. Like Jacob wrestling with the angel all night, Genesis 32:24-30. Your soul wrestles with things it doesn't fully understand, and the struggle manifests as tears, trembling, and awe. It's the process of being spiritually initiated. God often chooses these moments to reveal what we couldn't learn otherwise. A forgotten wound, an unspoken prayer, a hope we didn't dare to dream. He shows up quietly through the music, the sermon, or even a fleeting thought. And you cry, not because you're weak, but because your spirit is being calibrated. Real understanding in God's presence is rarely intellectual, it's experiential, it's felt, and tears are proof that the experience is landing. Sometimes tears even act as a mirror. They reflect back the state of your heart, showing you what's been neglected, forgiveness withheld, burdens carried too long, faith unspoken. And the beauty is, you can't fake it. God sees it all, and He works in that vulnerability. Those drops on your cheeks, they're sacred markers, small yet powerful signals that your heart is awake and aligned with His truth. Let's be honest, we live in a world that prizes control, composure, and explanation. But God operates in mystery. Sometimes the most profound lessons are unexplainable, That's why people who resist tears often resist transformation. And those who cry freely, even quietly, even alone in the pew, are often receiving insights that shift the course of their lives forever. So ask yourself this: what is God trying to reveal to you today in the silence of your tears? What insight, understanding, or breakthrough has been waiting for you all along patiently until the moment your spirit could finally grasp it? That's why your tears are not just natural. They are supernatural. They are a doorway, a portal, and a witness to God moving in your life. The hidden healing that happens in the middle of the cry. Healing doesn't always happen the way we expect. It's not always instant. It's not always loud. Sometimes it happens slowly, quietly, in the middle of a cry you didn't plan. You're standing in church, hands barely lifted, heart unsure. And then something breaks open inside you. A pain you didn't have words for. A memory you tried to forget. A deep ache that had gone untreated for years. And yet, somehow, without a single touch, without anyone noticing, God begins to heal you right there. Tears in that moment aren't just emotion. They're evidence of restoration, of divine surgery happening beneath the surface. You may not see the scar yet, but something internal is shifting. And the longer you stay in that place, vulnerable, raw, surrendered, the more ground heaven takes back from the enemy. Healing doesn't always look like a dramatic testimony. Sometimes it's the quiet miracle of a heart finally breathing again after years of spiritual suffocation. Remember the woman with the issue of blood? Mark 5:25-34. She had spent years looking for healing. Doctors failed her, culture rejected her. But in one desperate, unseen moment, just one touch of Jesus' garment, everything changed. That moment was personal, unnoticed by the crowd, but deeply transformative. That's how God often works in your cry, personally, intimately, without fanfare. You might not feel fireworks, but you will feel freedom. And maybe that's what makes the tears so powerful. They sneak past your need to explain or perform. They usher you into a space where healing is allowed to take place, not because you earned it, but because God is good. Some wounds we carry so long, they become part of our identity. But in His presence, those layers begin to peel away. And sometimes all that's left is the tear that marks the beginning of a new you. Have you ever wondered why healing moments can feel so heavy? It's because God isn't just putting a bandage on your pain, He's uprooting it. He's rewriting the story you told yourself, that you were too broken, too far gone, too damaged. And in the stillness of church, while no one else may notice, He notices. And your cry? That's where the infection leaves and the truth enters. That's where the healing begins. So don't rush past it. Don't apologize for it. Stay in that cry if it's where God is working. Let the tears fall. Let the weight lift. Because healing isn't always about a sermon or a laying of hands. Sometimes it's just about being in the room, in His presence, and finally letting go. Sometimes the greatest healing happens when you're not even trying, just weeping and being loved through it. When your spirit remembers what your mind forgot. There's a kind of crying in church that doesn't come from current pain, but from something deeper, something ancient, something that was buried not just over years, but maybe even over generations. It feels like your soul is remembering something your conscious mind hasn't caught up with yet. A calling, a wound, a promise, a moment where, in worship or prayer, the tears come suddenly, not because of what was said, but because something eternal has been stirred back to life. That's the mystery of the human spirit. It remembers what our logic suppresses. It holds on to divine truth, even when our minds drift. And in God's presence, your spirit, not your intellect, leads the way. That's why people sometimes cry and say, "I don't know what's happening to me." but deep down they do. It's not confusion, it's recognition. Something inside is waking up. The tears are simply the sound of your soul saying, "Yes, I remember this." Think of the prodigal son, Luke 15. The Bible says he came to himself, a turning point not born from theology or a sermon, but from spiritual clarity. He remembered who he was, who his father was, and that memory pulled him out of the mud and back into grace. That's what can happen in church, even in a single moment. One word, one worship set, one silent pause, and suddenly identity is restored. That's not just emotion, that's divine memory reactivating destiny. You ever feel like something hits you in service that you can't explain, but it feels familiar, as if something long lost inside you suddenly speaks? That's your spirit responding to the voice of its creator. We forget what we were created for. We forget that we were made to walk with God, hear his voice, rest in his presence, but the Spirit never forgets. It just waits, and when the moment comes, the tears are the evidence that you've come home to something you didn't know you missed. These aren't just emotional moments, they're alignment moments. God is pulling you back into sync with your original design. And sometimes that process feels like weeping, but not because you're broken, because you're reconnecting. It's like catching a scent from childhood or hearing an old melody. Your body reacts before your mind fully processes. That's how worship and presence work. Your spirit leaps and your heart follows. So next time you find yourself crying in church and you can't explain why, consider this. Maybe your spirit remembered something your mind forgot. And maybe that moment is less about unraveling and more about returning to truth, to purpose, to your Father. And what a beautiful thing to be reminded of who you really are in the safest place you could ever be, his presence. When God answers you through the tears. Sometimes you cry in church because you're finally getting the answer you've been begging for, but it doesn't come the way you expected. You prayed for clarity, for breakthrough, for direction, and instead of a loud voice or burning bush, what you receive is stillness, a song that pierces through you, a moment where God doesn't speak to you, he speaks in you, and suddenly the tears come. Not from confusion, but because deep down you know this is the answer. It's strange, isn't it, that God can say so much without a single word. You might have walked into church asking, "God, do you see me? Are you still with me?" And then, mid-worship or right in the middle of silence, something shifts. You begin to weep, and it's like your soul says, "Yes, he's here. He never left." That's when you realize your tears are the response. The presence of God doesn't always explain. Sometimes he just fills. Moses had a moment like this. On Mount Sinai, when he asked to see God's glory, God didn't lecture or analyze, he just passed by. His presence was the answer. Exodus 33:18-22. And when that happens to you, when God passes by, your tears become sacred proof that you encountered something real. You may not leave with a 3-step plan, but you leave changed, calmer, anchored, answered in a way your intellect couldn't have received anyway. Some answers don't come through clarity, they come through peace. Peace that surpasses understanding, Philippians 4:7. That's why you can cry without knowing exactly why, because your spirit received something your mind hasn't yet translated. You asked God to show up, and he did. Not in fire, not in earthquake, but in the gentle whisper and the flood of tears that followed. And maybe that's the brilliance of how God works. He doesn't just resolve your circumstances, he restores your soul. And in that restoration, your questions become smaller. Not because they were answered with data, but because they were answered with presence. And when presence enters, panic leaves. That's why you cry. Not because everything's fixed, but because you know you're not alone anymore. So if you've been asking, searching, waiting for God to respond, don't overlook the tears. Don't dismiss the moment. He might have already answered you. Not with explanation, but with encounter. And that kind of answer, it's enough to change everything. What if the tears are a sign that you're finally alive? What if the reason you cry in church is because you're finally waking up? Not physically, spiritually. What if those tears aren't just about emotion or healing or conviction, but about resurrection? You've been surviving, functioning, showing up, but somewhere along the way, part of you fell asleep. You stopped feeling, stopped hoping, stopped believing that anything could change. And now, here you are, in the presence of God, and for the first time in a long time, you feel something real. That's not weakness, that's life. That's proof that your heart is still beating, that your spirit is still capable of responding. Those tears are evidence that the numbness is breaking off. You're no longer just existing, you're awakening. And yes, awakening often hurts at first. It's uncomfortable, but it's also beautiful, because you can't heal what you won't feel. And God, in His mercy, will sometimes allow the tears to be the first breath of a heart that's been asleep for far too long. Remember Lazarus? Dead for 4 days. Everyone had already given up. But then Jesus arrives, and He calls him out. And Lazarus walks out of the tomb, still wrapped in grave clothes. That's what God might be doing with you, calling you out, not of physical death, but emotional and spiritual dormancy. And sometimes the first thing that happens when your soul starts to rise is that it cries, it mourns what was lost, it grieves the silence, it releases the ache, and then it begins to breathe again. Maybe the tears you've shed in church aren't about sadness. Maybe they're sacred proof that God is raising something in you from the dead. Your faith, your dreams, your voice, your identity. Maybe that lump in your throat is the signal that your heart is being restored, not by hype, not by a motivational phrase, but by raw, divine love that refuses to leave you where it found you. And that's the message under all of this. You're still alive, not because you have everything figured out, not because you're spiritually elite, but because your soul still responds to God. You still cry, you still break in His presence, you still get stirred when you hear His name. That means the Spirit is still moving. You haven't missed it. You haven't gone too far. You're not too cold or too hard or too distant. You're just waking up again. So the next time the tears come, don't push them away. Don't apologize for them. Receive them. Let them mark the moment, because maybe, just maybe, they aren't a breakdown at all. They're resurrection, and what a miracle it is to feel again. So now you know, those tears aren't random. They're not weakness. They're not drama. They're a response to something holy, something deep, something eternal that's touching the most hidden parts of you. Every drop carries meaning. Every cry is heard. And somewhere in the middle of all that emotion, God is speaking, healing, calling you back to life. You may have walked into church thinking you were falling apart, but maybe you were falling into alignment with truth, with purpose, with His presence. And that kind of encounter, it doesn't just stir you, it changes you. And the next time those tears come, let them come. Let them mark the moment, because you're not just crying, you're connecting with heaven. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever cried in church and didn't know why? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it. Because your story might be the breakthrough someone else is praying for. And if this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it too. And if this video stirred something in you, you're not done yet. The next video on screen takes this conversation even deeper. into what happens when God's presence completely overtakes your life. Don't miss it.